Good morning, everybody. So nice to see everybody on today. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's topic is modern annuities exposed, the good, the bad, the ugly. And Bill, who's this guy between us?
I think he's some one of those actors types, isn't he?
Clint Eastwood, movie star. We unfortunately weren't able to get Clint Eastwood's contact information. So if you want to speak to him, you have to call us. So well, we're happy to have you, everybody. We're Tara and Bill with Senior Resource Center, and we do four distinct things in our practice. We do comprehensive retirement planning, and so that's looking at your portfolio and kind of seeing what we can do to help you not outlive your money and look at 30-year plans and try to see how we can maximize your retirement. The next is tax planning to help you pay less tax. We do a lot of long term care planning that includes insurance products and helping people plan and protect to get federal and state programs like Medicaid for long term care and VA aid and attendance. And lastly, we do estate planning. So we're not attorneys, but we help people look at what type of legal documents they need to meet their needs when they're alive and when they've passed. All right, so this has been a part of one of a big series we've been doing since February. If you happen to miss any of our presentations over the last few months, be sure to go on our website at srctexas.com and go to resources. And under the resources tab, there is a webinar recording tab, and you can go back and watch any of these presentations that we've done. So this is actually our second to last webinar in the series. We're glad you joined us. And today we're talking about modern annuities exposed. All right, Bill, you're on deck.
Thank you, Tara. Welcome, everybody. Today's webinar is very timely, I think. I think you'll come to find that out as we go through what we want to talk about today. We use a lot of tools in our practice to help people create safe, secure retirement plans. And one of the tools that we use are annuities. And over the years, we've talked to a lot of people, and there's a lot of confusion about how annuities work, whether they're good, they're bad. There's all kinds of critique on them. And so in today's webinar, what we want to do is kind of delve into the types of annuities that exist and talk about what is correct or what is true on them. And more importantly, what's available with what I call a modern annuity, a product available today, not a product that was available maybe for our moms or dads or grandparents 20 or 30 years ago. So we're going to kind of expose this product and look for features that might make it a fit in certain places in retirement planning. And the challenge we're all facing, there's two big ones. One is longevity. We're living much, much longer. And that means our money has to last longer. And we're in just probably the most volatile period of the last 20 or 30 years. The Fed is desperately fighting inflation and kind of losing the battle. And at the same time, markets are recoiling because nobody knows what's coming next. The Fed was instrumental back in '08 trying to revive the economy. They started doing something I wasn't a fan of. They started buying government debt. And over the last 12, 13 years, they've printed or created an additional $9 trillion of US currency. Because when the Fed buys government debt, they have to pay for it. And they've expanded the money supply. And that's one of the strong factors that's driving the inflation that we're facing right now. So on the one hand, the Fed's still buying debt, which is putting gasoline on the inflation fire. At the same time, they're raising interest rates. And you can imagine Wall Street doesn't like that level of instability. So the challenge we've got, longevity is one. And the second thing is, and kind of in parallel, is inflation. Maybe we've got enough money to live comfortably today, but what will that look like in 10 or 15 years when the cost of everything has escalated dramatically? So there's some challenges in front of us. And what Tara and I do is we look for ways to create safe, secure retirement plans where the solutions you pick, you control. They're not controlled or dictated by the Federal Reserve or by Congress setting tax rates or by Wall Street and what's going on in the markets. So the problem is Money's got to last longer, and it's got to keep up with the rising cost of living. So I use the term modern annuities, and sometimes people say, "What do you mean by modern annuities, Bill?" And if I ask a question, where were annuities created? Most people think, well, I guess the last 20, 30 years. Wasn't that something we created here in the United States? And the actual answer is a little bit older. Annuities were created back in the time of the Romans. In fact, the word annua, which is the basis of the word annuity, an annua was a Roman contract. It created an annual stipend or payment. And essentially, what somebody did, they took a bucket of money, handed it to someone else, and that person who received the bucket of money was on the hook to provide a lifetime stream of payments. And so that's kind of where annuities actually got started. The whole notion of income in retirement. That's what annuities were designed to provide. Well, the first annuities appeared in our country before we were actually even a country. First annuities were developed by the Presbyterian faith in Pennsylvania, and what they were looking for was a way to compensate ministers after they retired. And so the Presbyterian Church set up funds uh, for ministers, and people would contribute to it while they were working as a minister, and then when they retired, they'd start drawing a lifetime pension. So annuities go way, way back. But here's the really exciting part of this story. Up until about 10 or 12 years ago, annuities were okay. They were good conservative investments. They usually outperformed what the bank was paying in interests. They could be used to generate lifetime income, but there were some consequences to generating that lifetime income. But I make a statement when people come in. I go, there's been more improvements in the types of annuities that Tara and I work with in the past 10 years than in the prior 2000. And that kind of shocks a lot of people. People look at that and they go, what, really? I mean, how could they have made such great improvements? But the reality is, a lot of improvements have been made over the last 10 years. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So before we delve into a specific type, I want to talk to you about three different types of annuities. The first one, almost all of us take advantage of, an immediate income annuity. You might say to yourself, well, Bill, I don't have an annuity. Well, if you're drawing Social Security, you have the largest annuity in the country. President Roosevelt in the 1930s wanted to protect older Americans from the devastation of the Great Depression. And so he created Social Security so that seniors, people 65 or older, could start drawing an income stream that they couldn't outlive. Today, you see these immediate income annuities in a lot of other places. My wife is a retired teacher, and as a teacher, she contributes in the school system. TRS contributes to a pension, and then when she retired, she started drawing a lifetime stream of payments. So, immediate income annuities, these are the bedrock of what existed back in the Roman times, and they exist even today. And Tara and I use these immediate income annuities as one of the components in long-term care planning for couples. If you have a couple and a couple has, let's say, a big bucket of money, but it's after-tax money, it's money you had in a checking account or savings account, the state of Texas wants one of the spouses to spend half of that down before they can get eligible for Medicaid and to help pay for care. Tara and I use immediate income annuities to transfer assets between spouses. And I ask the spouse, I go, would you rather pay the nursing home or your spouse at home? And hopefully the answer is, I want to pay my spouse at home. So we use immediate income annuities in Medicaid planning. The second type are variable annuities. And the third one is fixed index annuities. The second and third types are actually what I call tax deferred annuities. That's where you put money in, it compounds and grows, and then at some point you can start taking out either chunks of money or you can turn on a lifetime stream of payments. So, what's the difference between variable annuities and fixed annuities? Well, variables, Tara and I don't offer these. Variable annuities have two, I guess, criticisms. And the first is that they have very high fees. We recently worked with a family where their agent or advisor was offering up a variable annuity. And I asked him, I said, would you check with your advisor, find out what the annual fees are? When he came back, he said, well, gosh, it's 3% a year. And I said, how long do you think you'll have that annuity? Well, 20 years. 3% times 20, 60% of his money was going to be in somebody else's pocket over that 20-year period. That's a very high fee structure. Not a fan of fees. I don't like fees at all. The second downside or risk factor associated with a variable annuity is that you're putting your money actually directly into the stock market. And that's wonderful when the market's charging ahead 10 or 15% a year. You can cover that 3% fee and still make a little bit of a profit. But what we've seen, in the markets, in 2000, there was a huge correction. In 2008, there was another major correction that led to the Great Recession. And I think right now we're starting to see uh, it's like the original sprinkling of a storm that's on the horizon. The Fed's going to fight inflation, it's going to raise interest rates. That's going to slow the economy down. And I think there's a very good chance there may be another substantial market correction. I'm not a securities licensed individual. That's just my opinion. But I'm very worried right now about what markets are going to do. I think we could be in for a very rough ride on Wall Street. And the third type of annuities, fixed indexed annuities, are what Tara and I use as part of one of the tools in our practice. And so, what is a fixed indexed annuity? There, I put money into a product. I can peg the growth against the stock market or a stock market index. So I can put money in, and there's many market indexes. Most people have heard about the S&P 500. That's one, but there's a whole variety of indexes that are available today inside of a fixed index annuity, and I can peg my growth against one of those indexes. If the market's up, I clock a gain, and that's very nice. But the advantage of a fixed indexed annuity, the years when the market drops, I don't participate. So I like to think of a fixed indexed annuity as a stairway investment. It's either heading north or heading sideways, but it's never correcting and going down. And if you've gotten a copy of my book, More Money for Retirement, and we're happy to either email a PDF of the book to everybody and or mail out a printed copy. If you read the chapter I wrote on beating the market, people say, well, Bill, how can you beat the market? And I go, well, there's two things you got to do. One is eliminate fees, because if you got to pay a 2 or 3% fee every year, it's hard to to keep going north. So you got to eliminate fees. We also have to take out market corrections. If you do those two things, I can show you ways using modern annuities to literally outperform the market. Read chapter in my book, Beat the Market, and you'll understand how that works. So let's talk about modern annuities, and we're going to focus on fixed indexed annuities. And let's start out with the good. Everybody remembers this guy, right? So here are the features that you get with a modern fixed indexed annuity. And these are not the same product that our grandparents had back in the 1990s or the 2000s. These products emerged starting in around 2009, 2010, and they've continued to make major improvements. By the way, if you want to get a sizing on how variable annuity and fixed annuity sales have gone over the last 10 years, you'll see it's a tale of two stories. Variable annuity sales have actually been dropping the last 10 years. They're now about 50% of what they were back in 2011. But that's not the big story. The big story is how much money is coming out. People are hemorrhaging those products, pulling a lot of money out. I think some people just got fed up paying the fees and worrying about market risk. On the other hand, fixed indexed annuity sales have continued to rise over the last 10 years. The only down year was 2020, and everything was down that year because of what the pandemic did. But sales of fixed index annuities continue to go up. Well, let's talk about the features. First, maximize safe growth. How do you get this stairway function we're talking about, where it goes up or sideways, where it doesn't participate downward? Well, when you have a fixed indexed annuity, you can position money into one or more index accounts. And there's also a fixed account. Some of the fixed accounts in these products today are paying 2.5, some 3%. And what the company makes the offer to you is, do you want to be in the fixed account and get your 2 or 3%, or do you want to be in an index? And if you say, I want to be in the index, they take the money that they were going to put in to pay you on fixed, because they know what that is, and they go and buy an option on that index. What's an option? It's a contract that says I have the right to buy the index or market a year out or 2 years out, but I don't have the obligation. I don't have to exercise the option. So let's say I buy the option and the market's up 5, 6%. So my index is paying off handsomely. They cash the option in and I get my 5 or 6% credited to my account. But what happens in the years when the market drops? Well, that option is worthless, or it has negative value. If I were to exercise it, it'd be a losing proposition. So I rip up the option. I don't make any money that year, but I don't lose anything. And that's how we provide safe growth for our clients. Part of the story is that's changed also is the number of indexes that are currently available. If you go back 10, 12 years ago, the S&P, the Dow, there were only 2 or 3 indexes available in indexed annuities. And they were okay, but the S&P isn't a managed index. It's just it's representing whatever the market's doing. Well, about 10 years ago, some smart people, Robert Shiller, guy that was recognized as one of the 50 smartest financial minds in the world, they started building what are called volatility control indexes. And very simply, what these are managed indexes, and their goal is to produce a consistent 5% annual return. Hopefully, there's years where you'll get 6, 7, 8. We have products that have averaged 8% the last 10 years. But the goal is to never go negative, even in bad years, to generate a 2 or 3% return. And these are the buckets that Tara and I are analyzing and recommending to our clients. These are volatility control indexes. Once again, if the index is negative this year, you just get a zero. You get a flat output. You don't lose money, but you don't make money. The second major improvement is what's called increasing lifetime income. If we go back to all the annuities that occurred prior to 2010, they all had a lifetime income stream. You could flip it on and it would pay out. And in the early days, you had to annuitize your product to get that lifetime payment. These are the products written in, say, 2003, 4, 5. Annuitizing isn't a 4-letter word, but it is in my dictionary. What do I mean by that? You could get a lifetime income. You could convert your annuity to a lifetime pension. But when you annuitized it, you lost access to the underlying bucket. So, yeah, you've got a lifetime payout, but it was a flat payout the rest of your life. And if you changed your mind, you couldn't go back and get money out of the bucket. Well, today's products feature income riders. You don't annuitize. So even if you turn an income stream on and it's a lifetime payout, you have the option of going back and taking more money out of the bucket if you need it. So you don't give up access to your bucket of funds. But more importantly, the older annuities all had flat payouts. And let me use my wife's TRS pension as an example. She's a retired teacher. She has a flat or level payout, which is great today. It's meeting her needs and supporting our lifestyle. But with inflation, her pension isn't going to increase, which means her buying power 10, 15, 20 years from now is going to be reduced. So about 10 years ago, the companies not only realized, hey, don't annuitize, that's a bad option, but then they started getting smarter, going, people need increasing lifetime income streams to keep up with inflation. And so today's products, the ones that Tara and I analyze and work with our clients, all have increasing income streams. That means what it pays today will be less than what it pays 3, 4, 5 years from now. If the market's down this year, I stay at the same income level. If the market's up, they modify and increase my lifetime payout. I like that. That's like our Social Security checks that are ideally designed to keep up with inflation. The cost of living is up. Last year, we got a 5.9% bump. That was nice. Not enough, but it was nice. And the same thing with the annuities. these annuities that we write, the income continues to increase. What's the third factor that's important on modern annuities? And that's the companies are rated. What do I mean by that? Well, a lot of companies operate under the radar. Nobody's looking at what they're doing. Years ago, we had a client whose mom and or his dad had worked at Enron. Remember that company? The one that was the big energy conglomerate, and they were big and they were powerful and they were controlling the industry. And then, unfortunately, one day Enron fell apart and all the stock became virtually worthless. Well, Enron, nobody was watching what was going on. But with insurance companies, these companies are rated, which means every year, every quarter, companies like AM Best, Fitch, Standard and Poor's, they go in and scrub the balance sheets of the insurance companies. Why is that important? Because you don't want to see things like Bitcoin, gold, some kind of hybrid security, mutual funds, stocks, or bonds in the insurance company's portfolio. Why? Because markets can drop. You and I know that markets can go way down, and the insurance companies can't provide safe, stable payments if the money they're managing is tied to risky investments. So if you look at the balance sheets of companies that are given an A or a high rating, A rating, B rating, that are given a high rating, you won't find any risk investments, no mortgage backed securities. What you'll find is stocks. What you'll find is U.S. government treasuries and high quality corporate bonds. And that's how they maintain a high rating. I like the knowledge that somebody else is watching the gold mine. I don't have to watch it because I know Standard and Poor's and Fitch and AM Best are scrubbing these companies to make sure they're keeping their balance sheets clean. We talked about tax deferred growth. That's a nice feature. Uh, that means you put money in, the money that's in there, if you're not taking any out, stays in, compounds. And the only time you would pay tax is when you start drawing out the money that is earned, or if it's an IRA inside your annuity, all of the funds coming out are taxable. If you refer back to an earlier webinar we did on the power of income, I'd strongly recommend listening to that because we show our clients how to get tax free money out of their IRAs. People say, well, how do you do that, Bill? And it's very simple. We put some of their IRA money into a tax deferred annuity. Some of the products we have maximize income. In other words, they draw down the asset value over a fairly short period of time. When they've drawn all the money out, you got all your money out, we flip it from an IRA to a Roth, and future payments are tax free. That feels pretty good. So if you have questions on how to get tax-free money out of your IRA, come see Tara or I. Another nice feature is creditor lawsuit protection. Why is this important? Well, what's protected from creditors and lawsuits of what you and I own? Our homes are protected. If we have a homestead exemption, creditor can't get it. Our IRAs are protected. That's kind of nice. 401ks, those are protected. Uh, Those are the primary assets that people have that are protected from creditors and lawsuits. Well, what if I have, like a gentleman, we worked with a family several months ago. The gentleman had sold some land and he had almost $1 million sitting in the bank. And I was working with him and his daughter, and I said, that's a lot of money to have in the bank. Is it earning anything? No. And I said, do you still drive a car? And this is an older gentleman. He said, yeah. His daughter winked at me and said, we're trying to get dad to stop driving. Here's the problem. Yes, the money in the bank is protected from the bank closing. But if this gentleman had an accident, turn on the TV today and all we see is ads for litigation attorneys like Thomas J. Henry or the guy that stands on top of cars, and Ted Lorenz, he's on top of everything. Everybody's one lawsuit away from having our money walk out of accounts. Well, annuities provide creditor lawsuit protection. So, unlike the money in the bank that can be taken by a creditor lawsuit, money held in a tax deferred annuity can't be touched. That's a nice level of protection. Uh, Another major feature, this really surprises people. If you have IRA funds and either you or your spouse needs to go to a nursing home, How much of it is subject to nursing home spend down? Pretty much half of it, maybe more than half of it. But there's one instrument that exempts IRA, 401k, 403b funds from Medicaid spend down. What is it? It's a tax deferred annuity. Several years ago, we had a gentleman. He called up and said, I need help, but I don't think you can help me. And I go, what do you mean we can't help? Well, you helped my mom get on Medicaid years ago. You protected her assets. But my wife now has early stage advancing dementia, and I can't care for her at home. She's going to have to go to a nursing home, and we have too much money. And I asked him, I said, well, how much do you have? And he said, about 725,000. 700 of it's in our IRAs. 25 is in the bank. And I said, well, I got some good news. I said, where's the money parked right now? Well, it's in the market. It's in the brokerage account. How do you feel about that? I don't feel very good about that. I remember '08 and '00 when I lost a whole bunch of our money. I said, well, why don't we roll the money over, that 700 over to something that's shielded not only from market corrections, but fully exempts the funds. And we did. And we took the 700 off the table. The 25 he was able to keep. His wife got on Medicaid. Her cost of care in the nursing home was $23 a month. So show me another product that exempts funds from nursing home spend down. There isn't any. It's a tax deferred annuity. And this works with qualified funds. So IRA, 401k. Another feature, we talked about variable annuities having major management fees, usually around 3%. Well, Tara and I don't like fees. And the fees, we look for products that have either minimal or no management fees at all. We have some great growth products. One of them I'm thinking about has averaged over 7% the last 10 years. And it has no fees on the account at all. You get to keep whatever it earns. I kind of like that. To me, that's a good, nice way to grow my money. The last feature I'll talk about is government guaranteed. Uh, Tara and I like sleep well at night, knowing that all the money that we help our clients manage is government guaranteed. If you have money in the bank and you have up to 250,000 in an account in your name, it's guaranteed by the FDIC if the bank should close. Well, that same level of protection is available from state insurance funds that every state has that guarantee funds in annuities up to 250,000. So when we have clients that say, Bill, I've got 400 or 500,000 I'd like to protect, I'd like your help on growing, I'd like income from it. I go, and they ask me, what annuity are you going to recommend? I say, I'm going to recommend annuities. What? I'm going to recommend more than one. Why? If we put 200 in one account and 200 in another with different companies, both of them have $250,000 protection. The insurance companies we work with aren't going to go out of business, but I like everything. I like having a further level of backup and protection on the money we help our clients manage. So let's summarize: safe growth, figures 5, 6, 7% a year, no downside. Increasing lifetime income streams, that keeps up with inflation. The companies are being rated or measured, so we're not going to get caught short with an Enron type of debacle. Creditor lawsuit protection, tax deferred growth, creditor lawsuit protection for my after tax money. That's nice. Uh, we exempt funds from qualified funds from long term care. I don't have to spend it down. That's nice. Minimal or no management fees and government protection. Nice set of features that come all in one product, a tax deferred fixed indexed annuity. Let's talk about the bad now. Over the years, many people have come in and said, Bill, I have an unfavorable opinion about annuities. And I go, well, tell me what your unfavorable features are, things you don't like. And typically, what I find are these are the gripes or the criticisms that existed 15 years ago. And I don't debate them. I go, hey, you're absolutely right. It's just that modern annuities don't have these features. We talked about annuitization. Yeah, you get a lifetime payment, but you give up access to your bucket of money. I don't like that. I like knowing my bucket's there. So if I have an emergency and I have to go back and get a lump sum out later, I can still do that. So annuitization was a very good critique on annuities until about 10 years ago. Today it doesn't measure up. Complicated moving parts. I've had people come in and say, well, you got these indexes and some have participation rates and some have caps on growth. And I go, yeah. And then there's some are based on 1 year periods or 2 year periods or 3 year periods. And they go, geez, these seem complicated. And then I ask my clients a question. Do you know what goes on under the hood of your car? What? Do you know what's going on under the hood? You've got a lot of mechanical moving parts. I drive a plug in Prius hybrid. So I've got both an electric motor and a gas motor. And there's a lot of computer circuitry under there, all doing magical things. Bill, do you know how that car operates? And I go, well, no, I don't. My car is actually very complicated. If you have a modern car with lots of electronic features, you've got a complicated instrument. But yet, you and I have learned how to operate this complicated vehicle. Why? Because it has a dashboard. It has a set of instruments that say, hey, Bill, your gas tank's almost empty. Time to fill up. Or it's time to charge the hybrid battery. Or, hey, you need maintenance. My car tells me it's time to go see the service guy to get the oil changed. So I've learned how to read the instrument panel on my car, and I know you have too. And that's what we do with annuities. Yes, they have moving parts, but I teach my clients how to read the statement. Here's how your product is growing. Here are your choices. We sit with our clients annually and go, do you like this current allocation? Maybe here's a suggestion for the next year. And so we take a lot of this complicated baloney off the table. I teach them how to read their statements, and then, like reading the dashboard, you know what's going on. The next gripe was limited growth. This was true back in 2003, 4, 5, 2007. The indexes we had to choose from were pretty much tied only to the S&P 500. And that was okay. We could average 4%, 3%, 5% growth. But with today's volatility controlled indexes, the average growth can be anywhere from 7 to 8%, maybe more. And so limited growth really doesn't play in. You go back to the next one, lots of fees. I hear this gripe a lot, and I go, what type of annuity are you talking about? Well, they're all the same. And I go, no, they're not. I go, what type specifically? Well, it's a variable annuity. Right, lots of fees. You're right. You've got a product there that has lots of fees. That's why a lot of people are bailing out of them. They don't like paying the fees. With fixed indexed annuities, we have products, as I mentioned, that have no fees at all. The next gripe, long contracts and surrender charges. And I go, yeah, that's actually a true statement. Most of the annuities we write are 10-year contracts. And they do have surrender charges if you want to take all your money out before the end of the period. So then I ask a question. What's the purpose of the funds we're going to be working with? Well, Bill, it's to support my retirement. Well, is your retirement a short-term or a long-term adventure? Well, Bill, it's probably a 20, 30-year adventure. So it's a long-term arrangement, right? Yeah. Then a long-term contract can be a very nice fit. If we're trying to design something that'll support your lifetime of expenses, in other words, support your lifestyle for the next 20 to 30 years, you want a long-term contract. Said another way, when clients come in and go, Bill, I got 200,000 in the bank and I'm not getting any return. Can you help me get a nice return? My first question is, what's the purpose of the money in the bank? And if they go, well, it's for my retirement, great. Let's investigate an annuity. If they go, well, my wife and I are going to build a house in 2 years, then we don't want to put it in annuity. Then you want to look at something like maybe a 1-year CD or 2-year CD. You won't earn much, but you also won't lose any money. And then an annuity is not a good fit. So what's the purpose of what you're trying to accomplish? If it's a long-term strategy, then investigating annuities might make sense. And the last gripe on after-tax annuities. What am I talking about here? No step up in basis. So what is this? This is a true statement. So let's understand what this statement means. If I buy a share of IBM stock for $100, I don't know what it goes for, but let's say it's 100, and I hold it for a couple of years and it gets up to 200. and I sell it, I have to pay capital gains on the growth in that stock value. But if I hold that stock till the moment when I die and my son or daughter inherits it, they get a step up in basis. So I bought the shares for 100, I sell them for 200, or I don't sell them. I die and it's worth 200. My son or daughter could sell it the next day for 200 and owe no tax on the gain. Well, with a tax deferred annuity, if you're putting after tax money in, I've got 50,000 in my savings account. That's not an IRA, not a 401k, it's just after tax money. I put it into an annuity and that 50 grows to 100 over 10 years. Well, if I die and my son or daughter inherits it, yes, they'll owe gain on the money in the annuity. So uh, when we're doing tax strategy and tax planning, we always look at that consequence. And there are some assets that get a step up in basis. There are others that don't. Like if you have an IRA and you die and your son or daughter inherits it, they don't get a step up in basis. They will still owe taxes on every dollar they take out of your IRA. So this is an issue. It's a factor, not a big one, but it has some merit. Finally, the ugly. Remember Eli Wallach? He got the bad rap in the movie. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So what's the ugly? And this is something I see in my practice. We've done this. Tara and I've done this for 20 years, and I found that it's not what I know about in life that gets me into trouble. It's what I think I know and act upon, but maybe what I'm thinking and acting upon wasn't correct. In other words, if if I believe that annuities are bad as a tool, once again, they're a tool like any other tool, and I act upon that, I'm limiting my choices. I'm taking something off the table as a tool. If I'm told a hammer is a bad tool and I've got a nail that I want to drive, and all I've got is a screwdriver and a pliers and a hammer on the table, but I've been told hammers are bad. Well, I'm not going to pick the hammer up. I'm leaving a valuable tool off the table. And uh, I think in our practice, Tara and I try to educate people on many aspects of retirement planning. Might be about Medicare, how to make smart choices, how to maximize a Social Security check, how to pay less income tax, how to invest safely and wisely, how to avoid probate. There's many things we educate people on, and annuities are one of the tools that we use in our practice. So if you come in, we're not going to sell you an annuity. I don't like being sold anything. We're going to educate you on what tools we have available, and then you'll make your own choice. The second option, and I think this is even sadder, we're going into a kind of a difficult period in the markets. Markets are already down, I don't know what, 14, 15%. Hopefully that's the floor, but there's a lot of economists and people saying, Bill, it ain't the floor at all. Things could still substantially head further south. And so here's a sad fact. Uh, if you don't know that there's a safe alternative to the stock market, and you think the market's the only option to build a safe, secure retirement plan, you're predicating your future on something that's outside of my control or your control. We don't control what the Fed does, what Wall Street does, what institutional investors do. We don't control what Mr. Putin does in the Ukraine. And so there's factors that are working outside of our control. And I never like putting my future at the risk of someone else's decisions and craziness. So just said another way, we have a number of tools in our bag of tricks to help build safe, secure retirement plans. We educate them, and we let them make their choices about how to build that type of future. Well, Tara, we covered a lot in 41 minutes.
That was great.
And so if you have questions and if you're looking to secure your retirement today, we'd very much welcome a phone call. Our consultations are always free. We welcome people coming in. If we can be of help and service, we will. And if we can't, we'll pay you that too. So, Tara, do we have any questions?
I don't see any questions right now. The only question we have is what's Clint Eastwood's phone number, but unfortunately we can't help you with that. All right. Well, we hope you'll join us next week. We have our final presentation of the series. And so,
And it's on the subject of, do you have a plan B?
yep.
What do we mean by that? Well, there's some major forces working. We know that Social Security, which is a bedrock of most retirement plans, is sadly underfunded. And if Congress doesn't get its act together, there's some risk in front of us. We know the markets are roiling right now. We know inflation is rising. We know Medicare is underfunded, our basic health care system for seniors in this country. And so we're going to talk about how do you offset some of the major risks that we're all going to face or could face. What if these things happen? Do we have a plan B to ensure that we still have a safe, comfortable retirement? So we welcome, join us next Tuesday at 10, and we'll be talking about plan B.
All right. With that said, we will see everyone next week. Have a wonderful week and see you real soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.